Hello, and welcome to the Connection Architect Certificate Program and your chance to meet the mentors that are ready to add real-time value to your experience in the community. I'm your host and Candy Community Builder, Michelle Hersayak-Nassif. Today, we're going to get real with another one of our learning level mentors, Nancy Milton, facilitator and leadership coach. We'll hear how Nancy is creating meaningful connecting points in her community and why it matters to put connections first. So thank you for being with us here today, Nancy. I would love to get started by hearing a little bit more about you and your career and what's happening for you in the world today.
Wonderful, thank you. Where does one begin? So what's happening with me, I think probably helpful for anyone who's looking for a mentor. I'll give you a quick little background on what got me into doing what I am today, as well as link it to the community piece that you spoke to. So I was very fortunate. One of my very first jobs coming out of very first job in high school was working in Parks and Rec. So Parks and Rec allowed me to recruit, train, and hire my team at the age of 15. So I was in a leadership role at a very young age. Fast forward through all my jobs, those skills continued with me. And when I had two kids really close in age, 16 months apart, and went back to work, I got to decide about going back about what I was passionate about, which then had me create what I call Nancy Milton Inc. And it's me facilitating and coaching individuals, helping leaders be better coaches and employees be better communicators. So I've now been doing that for 13 years. One thing when you asked about linking to the community, with the success my clients have had, I have not made one cold call. To date, my business has grown for the first 9.5 years on warm lead referrals. In the additional 3 and a bit years remaining, they have all been, about 85% actually has been still warm lead, and the remaining are people who find me online. So to me, when you speak about that community, it's the impact that has been had positively that people will say, hey, what's going on with you? You need to meet Nancy, will be the response. And that is how my business has grown, which is wonderful. One additional piece I'd like to share when you talk about that sense of community, I'm big on philanthropy and how I can be helping our community. So in November 2019, one of the initiatives I started is now called, because it was informal before, February 2020, officially launched as called the Fresh Start Project. The Fresh Start Project helps people move from shelters into new apartments. And our role as the Fresh Start Project is providing them everything that you put in a shelf, a drawer, a cupboard in those apartments, kitchens, bathrooms, linens for beds, things like that. We now have 4 chapters with a 5th one opening in mid to late fall and over 2,000 members. That is all 100% volunteer based, all about community. So long answer.
Wow, that's incredible, Nancy. I love hearing about that. And I resonate with having small children and transitioning back to the workforce, how critical it is for individuals, fathers and mothers, who are making those transitions from caregiving back into career, that it is purpose driven. So I totally resonate with that. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on what connection truly means to you.
Thank you. So when I started my business, prior to that and the work I did, I was really aware of who I thought I was supposed to be. And as I transitioned and went through all my accreditation and training for both coaching and facilitation, it continues to come back to actually, who are you and what does your best look like? Going through that work and learning more about my values and putting words to them, one of them is connection. So for me, connection is what you feel between yourself and another individual or individuals allows you to see all sides and be there through the hard, through the easy, and a belief in them. So for me, when I talk about trust, there's in my opinion, phenomenal definition of it, which is a confident reliance in someone when you're in a state of vulnerability. And I share that, that's Robert Hurst, if anyone's wondering that reference. So between that, what we've just spoken about with trust, vulnerability, and connection, it's really like a 3-legged stool to me and what I create. So very quickly out of the gate, you will feel I can hold the space well for people. And yes, it's part of what I do. It's also part of who I am. And to be able to have that allows us to have those levels of connections that I want to have in my life.
Yeah, that is so important. And it is, I'm so grateful that you're going to be a part of the program as a mentor, because facilitating conversations, events, critical conversations, all of that does require the facilitator to be able to hold that safe space, create that safety so that everyone can feel like they can be real and show up authentically. A lot of the curriculum in our programming with the 4 different learning levels is about, addressing the logistical sides of being a connector, but also the human and the emotional side. And it sounds like you've got lots of experience in both of those areas. So I'm really excited to have you. And I'm really now wanting to dive into how you believe the world benefits from better connections in our community.
Thank you. I need to confess to you, you and I were speaking just before you press record about my sister's dog being with me for a couple of days. I'm so aware of only using one hand because he's climbed beside me and I'm petting him with the other. So that's why I'm a one-handed talker today. I think, Worth, when you brought up special events earlier, you had acknowledged about just where I fit with that. Know that I have also accreditation in special events. So the logistics I do, and I was doing that in my job once upon a time, so I can really relate to that. And of course, being hired as a keynote speaker, I'm very aware of how those events run. And I actually, one of my corporate clients I work with right now is an event company. So we're sharing. So in the bigger scheme of things, how does connection work? To answer that question, I think I'm going to go the reverse way and say, witness what we have in the last number of years within our world and where it's not. So I look at our surprise when we see something like, look what someone did. Isn't that wonderful? I would like to see more of those every day. So to me, it's very much that grassroots, starting from here and climbing up, that at an individual level, it's how we lead outward to start creating those connectivity, or that connectivity, as well as how consistently we do it. So it's not a surprise or a shock when someone has done something lovely. It's that's how we treat people. That's what this looks like. So I think about the importance of role modeling. I think about the importance of us understanding and being clear on what our values are. Setting different expectations or parameters for ourselves and for the people within our community, anyone that we're communicating with, on how we treat each other and what's okay on how you treat me. And I think a lot of those lines can get blurred and have been accepted to be blurred because of where people will hide when they're communicating. For example, on social media. I used to do work with an airline a number of years ago, and to hear the horrific stories of what they would receive in customer service phone calls because they weren't being seen. So the hiding behind is the reverse, in my opinion, of connectivity. And it's also how we're learning to communicate, which isn't the right way. And I don't mean that using technology is the wrong way, but the level of communication that you and I are talking about is taking what you and I already feel right now, I know in our conversation that we've had, and how do we bring that to technology? Does that make sense on how I've described it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there is such a need for cultivating an awareness of that right now, because with the pandemic and how it's affected the way that we work, the way that we interact and connect with people, how do you build those connections in a virtual environment? There's so many considerations outside of the subject that's being discussed. There is a barrier between you that requires you to be more aware of your body language, of your tone of voice, of the way that you engage, so much more than if you were in person, because you're not kind of automatically getting those physical cues from people. So a lot of that safety comes from the acknowledgement of the space that you're in and where you're at, like meeting people where they're at. And you would do that if you were meeting with people in person. You would, read the room, you would adapt and adjust your approaches to suit your audience.
You'd have a shower, you take your jogging pants off, totally. So when you share that, one of the things I did through COVID, I made 5 videos to help people do better, connect better virtually. So some people, as you'll see, they'll have a screen and they're like this, like, you know what? So even doing that, and people are like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. But we haven't realized what we look like on the screen and how much that's affecting connecting. If we are doing a virtual call, it's about being able to see you. So instead of people watching themselves on the screen, which they get caught in doing often, you're looking at the green light the whole time to make that connection. Because when I look at the green light, it gives you my eye contact. And that's why supposedly we're on the screen. So those even fundamentals and basics, a lot of people didn't pick those up going through COVID. So they didn't understand why they were on screen all day and still not feeling connection. So there's so many levels and areas that we can go, but yes, that's definitely a place that I go for sure.
That's wonderful. And so as we close, Nancy, I'd love to ask you, what is the skill or the expertise or the lesson that you're the most looking forward to sharing with our community?
Oh, great question. Fundamentally, when I get in front of a group, there are three areas, two, that I love to do because of how important they are for that connection. So I would say 98% of the sessions I get to host, these are in them. One is how we build that connection through the trust definition I already provided you. So what does that look like? How do you need to show up? Because you need to give it to get it. It's a two-way street. The second one is what I call level 2 listening. And it was taught to me years ago through my coaching certification. I've got a couple exercises around that. The reason why that one is so important, in my opinion, when you're not listening at level 2 and what I was taught level 3, we're not actually really in the conversation. Very often we have a conversation to respond. Instead, we learn about how to earn to be able to respond. You need to earn to respond by how you listen, asking better questions, and doing a heck of a lot of confirming. So that's the area about that connection we're talking about that I would like to explore. So it gives them that skill to create that sooner, faster, quicker.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. It's been great hearing about you, and I would love for you just to quickly share where people can find you and connect with you.
Oh, fantastic. You can go to NancyMilton.ca. You can look me up on LinkedIn, Nancy Milton Inc. I believe I'm under, if you don't find me under Nancy Milton as well. And on Facebook, when I was talking about the Fresh Start Project, you can look at the Fresh Start Project Ontario just to see a little bit more about what I've created there with a co-partner, Sue Anderson, as well. You can find that on Facebook.
That's
wonderful. And actually, I should probably share on YouTube, if you look up Nancy Milton Inc., you'll probably find about 25, 30 videos, all 3-minute vignettes to give you an idea of some of the skills we've already spoken about and other things that I do.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And for everybody watching, if you're interested in learning more about the Connection Architect Certificate Program, you can find us on TheConnectionArchitect.ca. All right, so thank you and have a great day.
Thanks. Smoochie kaboochie.